Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this second night of our parish mission. And as we continue to just kind of work through in our hearts and our minds, encountering the Lord in the midst of a pandemic and just finding faith. We're so blessed to have Monsignor Fink last week and talking about the challenges and really entering into that battle, that spiritual warfare. And tonight, I'm very excited as well, like I was last week, to introduce another friend of mine. You know, one of the great blessings of the journey of the priesthood is the fraternity that you enter into. And Father Lachlan Cameron and we were in the seminary together. He was a year behind me. I was joking around with Father James and Father Collins. I said, I started the major seminary 1 year before him, but he was so smart. He finished it like 5 years ahead of me, right? And Father Lachlan and I have grown in that love for the Lord and have shared some great ministry and our friendship. He started out as a rookie priest, a baby priest at St. Rose of Lima. And so I know some of you had the opportunity to encounter him there and hear his homilies. And as he said, he was so good with the kids and with the youth. And then even the bishop saw that and asked him to come to work, into the bishop's office. He studied over in Rome. He's one of these wicked smart guys, And then there's the combination of his current ministry where he oversees what we would call evangelization and catechesis. And so there's this call to spread the gospel, and he's particularly on the campus of Stony Brook, but he oversees all of our campus ministry. And there's a program called Focus, F-O-C-U-S, which is the Fellowship of Catholic University Students. It's one of the big movements in the diocese that we support. In fact, at the end, we're going to have a faith offering, and if you could be generous to help us out there, and we're going to send that to the missionaries. These are young men and women who are on the campus with Father. I was going to call you Cameron, Father Lachlan. We always go by first names, but Father Lachlan out at Stony Brook, and they're really on the front lines, and it allows for them to really minister to these kids in this really difficult time. And so that's a big part of his ministry, is college ministry, but also catechesis from the standpoint of moving forward the formation of all Catholics on Long Island. I mean, that's how big his role is for us as the future of the church. And so tonight what he's going to do is he's going to speak to us about the tender heart of the Father, looking at the love of God. And so if there's something that moves you in his talk, just know that Father James and Father Collins will be on this side. Father James will actually be kind of in the hallway. There's a confessional there. Father Collins will be in this confessional. I'll be in the hallway on the other side. And after Father Lachlan speaks, he'll have the opportunity to be in the confessional here. So if you feel moved because you've heard about and encountered the tender heart of the Heavenly Father, I encourage you to enter into that. But in that time, we're also going to expose the Blessed Sacrament in a moment, and just to kind of keep this whole night like wrapped in prayer. You're going to be very happy, as I am, that to have Father Lachlan here with us and to speak into our hearts and to move us in this time of Lent. As I said, he's a very, very dear friend of mine. Father Lachlan and two other good priest friends. We've had the blessing of doing a lot of traveling together. We actually did a hiking trip in Greenland. I don't know if he's going to share any of those stories, but when we were lost in the middle of nowhere, which was because they were following me, giving the directions, I guess, right? No. But you'll see that just like people talk about him in this way, like he's like so normal, He's so smart and loves the Lord, but he's like so normal, and I think you'll see that in him too. So what I'm going to do is I'd ask if we can just in just a second, but not yet. We'll kneel. I'll put the Blessed Sacrament out. We'll listen to one song, and then Father Lachlan will begin his talk. So again, Father Lachlan, thank you so much for your presence tonight and sharing dinner with us. And we're so grateful that you're going to share your wisdom and, most importantly, your love for the Lord with the people of St. William. Please kneel. Okay, you can clap.
O sacrament most holy, O sacrament divine, all praise and all thanksgiving be every moment thine. Dear Jesus, with your Father, send the Holy Spirit upon us this night. Come, Holy Spirit, come and be with us. Come in this powerful season of Lent. Come on this holy night. Come into our hearts and into our minds. Refresh us and renew us. Help us to see all things new. Help us to know the tender love that you, Jesus, and the Father have for us. Come by the powerful intercession of the Blessed Virgin Mary. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. You can judge for yourselves if I'm normal. I'm grateful to Father Joe for the opportunity to be with you this night, to Father James and to Father Collins as well, and happy to be here close to St. Rose, close to Massapequa, where I had my start almost 13 years ago as a priest, where I was formed and shaped and learned so much from the good people in the neighboring parish. And not that people from St. Rose would come to St. William's or St. William's would go to St. Rose, but maybe we've seen each other before. As Father Joe said, I'm tasked with a few things in the diocese, and grateful to have been entrusted with them, and grateful for the prayers which keep me afloat. My day job is as the chaplain at Stony Brook University. I've been there for almost 3 years. The bishop had decided to, change up the game and sent a priest full-time to be on a campus up there of 27,000 students, with the medical school, with all the hard sciences that are so prominent on that campus, down to the undergraduates who are finding their way and the freshmen who are beginning. It's a gift to be there, and I enjoy it so much. I'm blessed to be with a campus minister who's also full-time, and as Father Joe said, these focused missionaries, 4 missionaries, 2 guys and 2 girls, who have graduated university themselves, feel this call to bring Christ to a campus. And so they petition to see if they can do so, and they're accepted into this organization, which is at about 160 campuses all over the U.S. and around the world. They're at NYU and Columbia, missionaries at West Point, all the service academies, across in Austria, Ireland, and since 2018 with us too at Stony Brook. They fundraise their own way. They have mission partners, people from back home, from California and Colorado and Pennsylvania and Maryland, who help them. And I'm grateful to Father Joe for being willing to take up a collection to support the team, the 4 who are with me at Stony Brook, and their work here in our diocese. March 9th, 2020, a whole year ago. It was a Monday, and it was just like today. Beautiful. The cold had retreated. The sun was out. The campus, Stony Brook, was abuzz. Students busy with their classes, looking forward to a spring break that was about a week away, tired. We're just so happy with the sunshine. And the big gathering space outside, the Staller Steps, was full. I had a window that overlooked it, and it just continued to grow in the course of the day. Our friends across the hall in Hillel, who are there for our Jewish brothers and sisters, they were busy preparing for Purim that night. And then it was like midday, and all of a sudden, I'm hearing from students that their professor said that they're probably going to be remote for the rest of the semester. and everybody was in shock. And everybody just kind of slowed down and waited for the news. I don't know the whole story, but Stony Brook's part of the SUNY system, and I guess the chancellor's the one who makes decisions, not presidents of universities. So I think signals got crossed, and we were in this bizarro world of about ready to go home, but not yet. So March 9th was a strange day. Our friends across the hall in Hillel debating whether or not to go ahead with the gathering that night, and they called it off, and we canceled our Newman Club meeting. Nothing was told to us, but we had the sense that it was the right thing to do, and the next few days we kind of kept in that strange spot, kind of waiting for it to drop. By Thursday, students were told to leave campus. Their spring break was going to be extended 1 week. I left on, I guess, the Wednesday night or Thursday. And then, like all of us, seeing the way things were going. I live in Comac at Christ the King, and in addition to the other things, I'm also the rectory cook. That's my... and the food shopper. So I woke up on Friday the 13th, early, and I said, I better go food shopping. I don't think this is going to go too well. I went to Best Market, just up the road, and I did one of those like old school food shoppings that our moms used to do, Father Joe. It was like, the Friday night over the top of the cart food shopping and buying like all sorts of stuff that I don't even know if we used it yet. It's probably still in the back of the freezer. Just with everybody, parishioners that I was seeing in that place, wanting to prepare for what was to come. I went home and I cooked for like 6 hours, trying to get things into, bags to maximize our space in the freezer, use every nook and cranny. I woke up the next day, it was the 14th of March, a Saturday morning, again early, and it clicked in my head. I said, you know what? We're not getting back on campus at all. The students had been told to come back and take all the things out of their dorms the day before. In my head, Stony Brook's going to use the dorms at some point to house medical personnel, those that would be at the front lines of fighting the virus. So I went up early on Saturday, and I shut down the office. I took the Blessed Sacrament out of our small chapel. Anything that was glittery, not that it's worth that much, but I hid, not knowing if someone was going to come in the next couple months. I defrosted the fridge, you'd be proud. I watered the plants, packed up the things, locked the door, and that was me. I wasn't back until the end of May. And I went back to a campus that had built 5 field hospitals. Right next to the football field, there's a big one. The generators were humming and humming and humming. Walking around in the fall, seeing them, and having that presence right there in the midst of a place that just a few months before had been so full of students and full of so much life and fun. Different. We got back, thanks be to God, in person to some degree. We started in the fall with about 4,500 students on campus, and so faithful to what they had to do to make sure it worked, and the administration so good and firm where they had to be and flexible where they could be. But that first day back, man, it was odd. Drove onto campus, I walked in, and I was frustrated because I wanted it to be different. This was like going to be year 3. Relationships had been built. We were moving. March 8th of last year, I was on a retreat with about 100 college students, and we were cranking. I wanted that year to look different this third year, and it wouldn't. And I had to just give my heart over and say, Lord, All right. And he was good. He showed up. He helped. And the remembrance that he would be there, not just that day, but throughout the year. And thanks be to God, the years unfolded, as we say to each other, right? It's different, but it's been good. And God has arrived, and students have had beautiful stories of conversion. One guy comes to mind, his freshman and sophomore year, at Mass faithfully on Sunday. To try to get him after Mass on Sunday, polite, would say hello, and poof, off. This year, he's on fire because he slowed down in the midst of all that happened and asked questions. Another student who came like the first weekend, a freshman, had never been to Mass before in his life. Baptized Catholic, but that was all. And he's preparing to receive his communion and confirmation right now. So the year, in the midst of all its weirdness and difficulty, has been good. God's been present to us. But it's been strange, difficult, trying, confounding, sad. We know the words. Here we are, March 9th, 2021. In the past year, we've learned a lot of things. We've learned about distance. We've learned about moving away from people. I remember the second time I went food shopping. It's probably like March 30th or something like that. I braved it, going out into who knows what to stock up again. This time it was the Stop and Shop in Smithtown. And when you saw somebody in the aisle, you moved away. The distance that we've learned, the suspicion, the moving away, and certainly not touching. Contactless. And we do those things for good reason, of course. We know why we do them. And we've become good at doing them. But they're still odd because they're not who we are. And they're not who we want to be. Our hearts long for something else. They long for closeness instead of distance. They long for someone who moves towards us in compassion rather than someone who pushes away. And our hearts long for tenderness, for someone who will touch us and embrace us rather than avoid us. Our hearts long for these things, and this past year, maybe for you, certainly for me, has heightened it. We want closeness and compassion and tenderness. We want what God gives. We want who God is. Pope Francis talks about God's style. And he says that God's style is closeness and compassion and tenderness. It's being near. It's moving towards. It's touching. We long for him. The past year has shown that to us. And of course, in this season of Lent, it comes to us anew. Looking at our missteps, the misdeeds, we're mindful that it's him we want when we choose other things. The tenderness that last of the words that Pope Francis puts in God's style, he talks about it a lot. Hard to believe, but almost 8 years ago, he became the Holy Father. March of 2013. And on March 19th, the Solemnity of St. Joseph, there was the Mass to inaugurate his pontificate. And at that Mass, he spoke of tenderness. He spoke of it about 6 or 7 times. And he's spoken of it a lot since then. If you go on to the Vatican website and you search the word tenderness, it comes up in different offices that have used the word, different popes who have used the word. My last search showed that Pope Francis used the word 672 times. Pope John Paul II used it about 10 or 12, and he was the runner-up. It's a word that Pope Francis comes back to again and again and again. That last word which speaks of God's style. What is this tenderness? Pope Francis says this, and he said it in a TED Talk that he gave. He said, tenderness is love that comes close and becomes real. Love that comes close and becomes real. It's not a theory. It's not a nice thought. It's love that rolls up its sleeves and gets involved. It becomes reality. And that tenderness is what God shows to us. Shown when he's born in Bethlehem, shown throughout his life, in Jesus, who walks among us, and shown on the cross, when God loves in a close way that's real. Tenderness is at the end of his style, and they're connected. The closeness, the compassion, the tenderness. Don't take my word for it. We'll take his word for it. And see how it's his style, it's his method. And it's what we long for. And just last week in Lent, we heard the beautiful parable of the prodigal son, the merciful father, the parable of the 2 brothers. Hear it this night, again. Jesus, talking to those scribes and those Pharisees, those who had come along and journeyed with him. This is embarrassing. I'm on Emmaus in Luke. I'm not on Luke 15. Let me use my index for 1 second and find it. I looked too quick before, thinking it was all perfect. Luke 15, 130. Let's go to 33. All right, so the famous parable. Tax collectors and sinners drawing near to listen to Jesus. But the Pharisees and scribes began to say, this man, he eats with sinners. He welcomes them. And in that context, Jesus tells the parable about the man who had 2 sons, and the younger son who said to the father, "Give me the share of the inheritance that's coming to me." And the father in love doesn't question, but divides his property. And after a few days, the younger son takes all the belongings, all the things that the father's given, and sets off for that distant country. And he squanders it all in a life that he wouldn't be too proud of. And when he had freely spent everything, a famine struck the country, Jesus says, and he found himself to be in dire need. We can imagine the words he might have said. He hired himself out to one of the local citizens, and he got sent off to take care of the pigs, the swine. Pretty demeaning, probably, for a Jew. And he's feeding them, and he's longing for the stuff that they're eating. This looks really good. But he didn't get any. And then, I love this phrase in the parable, coming to his senses, he thought, how many of my father's workers are doing just fine? They have enough food to eat. They're well taken care of. My father's a good man. And here I am, dying from hunger. Let me go back and say to him, look, I've sinned against heaven and against you. I've spent it all when I shouldn't have. Take me back as one of your workers, because I know you're a just man. And just treat me as you would one of them. I don't deserve anything more. Thinking that over and playing it out in his head, he got up and he went back. And while he was still a long way off, his father sees him. He's been looking for him. I picture the father up on like the second story, kind of unconcerned about the farm and all the workings and goings-ons of it. And this doesn't matter anymore. I'm looking for my son. Where is he? And seeing his son, he was filled with compassion. He ran to his son, embraced him, and kissed him. And the son, having rehearsed it all, gets down and starts saying the story that he repeated. Father, I've sinned against you. I no longer deserve to be called your son. And you can see the father almost like telling him to be quiet. You're here. That's all that matters. You've come back to me. And he orders his servants quickly, bring the finest robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Take the fattened calf, slaughter it. We're going to celebrate with a feast because my son was dead and he's come back to life. He was lost and he has been found. The parable goes on, but there's enough there for us to see this style of God and the Father loves his Son and is grateful to see him return. Closeness. The Son was still a long way off. And the Father said, you're not going to keep me 6 feet away. I'm going to run and be close to you. I won't wait for you. I will go to you. And he's filled with compassion. He's like, his heart is ripped open out of love for the gesture of the Son who returns to him. He doesn't want to move away from the Son. He wants to be near to him. So near that he wants to touch him. And so arriving there before his Son, he embraces him. And he kisses him. A style revealed to us of who God is, how he operates, shown in the parable. A few weeks back, before Lent started, I think it was Valentine's Day, we heard this story in St. Mark's Gospel about a leper who came to Jesus and knelt down before him. And he begged Jesus, God made man, and he said, if you wish, you can make me clean. Perhaps if you're like me in the past year, you've been exposed at some point. I had a memorable one on December, I think it was 17th. The night before, I was supposed to stop by here for dinner. And I said to Father Joe, I was on a retreat, and I said, I don't want to risk it. I don't want to knock St. William's out for Christmas, so let me stay away. Thank God I did. Because the next morning, I found out that someone had tested positive, and I was with the person. And I texted the priest that I live with, and I said, I'm coming home. I'm going to go right up to my room, close the door, and we'll figure it out. And I spent the next 10 days or so in isolation. I tried getting a rapid test, but that wasn't happening around Christmas time unless you wanted to, wait online for 8 hours or something. And I didn't think that prudent. And my sister, who's in healthcare, said to me, just stay put. better safe than sorry. If you're like me, you've experienced that at some point, and you can really resonate with the leper. The one who's supposed to stay away and say, unclean, unclean, don't come near me. I'm going downstairs for a minute with my N95 on and my hands like dipped in hand sanitizer to get something, and I'm running right back to my room, but you don't want to come near me. And this guy has the strength to go up and beg. He violates all the rules. If you wish, you can make me clean. And this is where we see that closeness and that compassion and that tenderness arise again. Moved with pity, Jesus stretched out his hand, touched him, and said to him, I do will it, be made clean. And the leprosy left him immediately, and he was made clean. Jesus, who's not scandalized by this man breaking the law, the commandments, and coming close, who doesn't seek distance, who doesn't run away, but draws near, is moved with pity and compassion, and reaches out and touches him. God's taken flesh in the Lord, and Jesus shows to us by his life, by his actions, who God is, how he operates. And what we hear about in this father who's lost his son and has found him is shown to us in this interaction between Jesus and the leper. He's not scandalized. There's closeness, compassion, and tenderness. One more to convince you. 3 is always a good number, right? Jesus, who had gone up the Mount of Olives in early morning, came back down again and was in the temple area, and people were coming to him. And the scribes and Pharisees brought a woman before him who had been caught in adultery. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And she stood in the middle. And they make it clear that she was caught, and the commandments tell us that we're to stone such women. What do you say? And Jesus, we know, bends down and begins to write in the ground with his finger. And they continued asking him, and he stands up and he says, let those who are without sin go ahead and launch the first rock. And he bends down and he begins to write again, and those who are older and have wisdom and have a sense of reflection are the ones who say, yeah, I can't do this, and they walk away. And then Jesus is there, and he straightens up and he says to the woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you? And she says, no one, sir. And he says, neither do I. Go, and from now on, do not sin anymore. Jesus, who could have been scandalized again by this woman caught in adultery, who could have sought distance from her, is moved by her story and draws near to her. And though it's not said, we could almost imagine him putting a hand on her shoulder, looking her in the eye, and saying, neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more. The closeness, the compassion, the tenderness, the style of God. It's how he works. It's his method. And we long for that, most especially after this year. The scriptures give us good stories about how God operates. Let me give you one from my family. I'm the youngest of 4. I have a sister and 2 brothers who are older. Grew up in Belrose Terrace. And up until, I guess, about 6 or 7 years ago, everybody lived here on the island. My folks had moved to Stewart Manor. My sister was there. My brothers were in Long Island City for a bit after coming to their senses and moving back from Hoboken, It's a lot easier visiting them in Queens than going to Jersey. But my brother, who was doing well with work, was invited to go out to Los Angeles. And he commuted back and forth for a couple months, and then he has a kind of the California personality, just laid back, and it suited him. So he made the jump and moved to L.A. He was the first one to go. And a couple years back, 3 years, I guess it was, my sister was looking at some schooling options for my niece and thought it a good opportunity to relocate with the family for my niece. And she moved down to Tennessee, just south of Nashville. And then it was my folks in Stewart Manor and my brother in Stewart Manor and his family and me. And then my folks made that discernment with grandchildren in 2 states and where they want to land. And my brother and I had said, don't worry about us. Go. And thanks be to God, they went. And they're doing well. But it's now me and my brother and his wife and his 3 sons, my nephews, who are 6 on down. And I guess Thanksgiving of 19, it was like the first time really where my folks were down at that point, and Thanksgiving became complicated. It never had been before. We just went to my mom's or maybe my aunt's. And now, what are we doing? And my sister said, I'll host. And it was this nice highlight to get down. So my brother and I, we were flying down on a Tuesday night. He's a assistant principal at Archbishop Malloy, so not too far from home, and he was going to come back home, and I was going to meet him at his house, and we were going to get the boys together and then get a lift over to Kennedy. My sister-in-law works in the city, and she's the brains of the operation, knowing the mess that it was going to be getting from Stewart Manor to Kennedy Airport with the stuff of, I guess at that time, like a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old. It was a mess. I couldn't believe the amount of stuff that little kids need. We got it. We got to the terminal. We got out of the car, which was its own feed. We checked in. We got through security. And then it was Terminal 4, Kennedy Airport, which is goes on for a mile. And we were, of course, the last gate. And we're walking down, my brother, and he's a good dad. He has the cart, and he lays the boys out on it. So, he has them in front of them. They're not running around. They're not going to get run over, which means I have to carry all the luggage. So I'm this donkey, walking through Terminal 4 with lots of bags and stroller things and all sorts of stuff. And finally, he said, let's take a break. So we pulled off into a restaurant. We had time. My sister-in-law was going to meet us shortly, and again, he's a good dad. He gets it. We go in. He says, I need a booth. Okay. He said, the boys go in, you sit there, I sit here, and they're penned in. Smart. He orders the stuff that little boys eat. I remember that there was French fries, and he got a waffle, some other things, and we had a beer, which made the whole thing bearable after the long workout. Dinner, I guess if you can call it that, progresses, right? It was maybe more like feeding time at the zoo. It was kind of wild. And my brother is just, I see him a lot. I see the family a lot. I'm blessed in that way. But I remember that day, I was just kind of in awe of him. Because I couldn't do this. And I remember him, playing with them, and I'm young, and seeing him grow up and hanging out with them as we're growing up. And all of a sudden, he's this dad of 3 young boys, and he's doing it. Air support's coming. Mom is on the way, but he's doing it. And I remember toward the end, the youngest guy, he went for the waffle. And, looking at my brother across the table, and we're talking about something and kind of not paying attention, I guess, at that point. And he takes the waffle and he saturates it in syrup. And he picks a piece of this waffle up. And all of a sudden, he just kind of holds out over my brother. And it just drips on him. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, this is horrible. I would be, running and trying to get the syrup off. But he just kind of takes it. He absorbs it, like the waffle absorbed the syrup. It was wild. I just remember, cleaning up and getting underway, and I guess that was the line, and we started to move a bit further. But the image just stuck with me, and I would go to it in prayer. Because we can hear about this father who runs to his son. We can hear about a leper who comes near to Jesus, and Jesus is moved with compassion. We can hear about Jesus who looks this woman in the eye and says, "Go and sin no more." And we can understand something of God's closeness and compassion and tenderness. But if we look to our families in those moments, when maybe parents or children or grandparents or friends or whoever it be live it, it comes alive. That tenderness, love that comes close and becomes real is there. And here's a man, my brother, who has all the things that are in him in his history, but who loves these boys and is willing to be dripped upon for them. Love, closeness, compassion, tenderness. Lent calls us to search in our hearts for God who wants to come close and who wants to show us compassion, who wants to be tender, who wants to be near, who wants to be moved with pity for us, who wants to touch us. What's required of us in Lent and the hardness of it is to move away from the distance that we want to keep with him. And the desire at times not to be close to him. Lent calls us to have the courage to open our hearts to his tenderness, the tenderness of the Father. Hopefully these words, closeness, compassion, and tenderness, can help us and orient us here, I guess, midway through the season, and encourage us and embolden us to go deeper with the Lord who wants to be near to us. I know some are watching virtually tonight, for all in the church here, the opportunity to go to confession in a few moments. And what is confession? It's us in our humility, being like that son who goes back to the Father. It's us, the beggar, who could shout out, "Unclean, stay away. You don't know how impatient I was on 135 on the way down." It's us, the woman, sometimes caught in the act. Impatience that comes upon us, anger, frustration. It's us going before God, being willing to overcome the distance, being moved by him and seeking to touch him in this sacrament that he's given us, and experiencing there again his mercy. It's been a year. Hopefully it's been a year that's shown us what we long for: closeness and compassion and tenderness. Hopefully this season is a time to renew within us that desire for him who is close, who is compassionate, and who is tender.